So, hey, welcome everybody, and thank you for joining today on our next segment of the 2025 Data Heroes Summit. I know we've got lots of people out there participating and listening, so thank you everybody for taking some time today to learn a little bit more about master data management and data challenges. This segment is named the Chaos, and we're going to be discussing what are the challenges that are blocking your data progress. And today I'm joined by two distinguished speakers who have been in the trenches in solving some of these problems within their organizations. I'm really delighted to have both Nicholas and Ben joining today. I will let each of them introduce themselves. So Ben, maybe you can go ahead and go first, introduce yourself, and tell the organization or the group a little bit about your organization.
Absolutely. My name is Ben Montague. I work with Batory Foods as a senior manager of data strategy. Batory Foods is a bulk food distributor and manufacturer of ingredients. So read the back of the label. That's what we do. And so, I've been with Batory Foods going on about 10 years now in various roles and have been the data strategy manager for almost 2 years.
Awesome. Well, great. Thank you, Ben, and thank you for joining us. Nicholas, how about you?
Yeah, thanks for having me. My name is Nicholas Obey. I'm a senior data manager at WSP based over in Montreal, Quebec. WSP is one of the world's leading professional services firms delivering strategic consulting, engineering solutions across a wide range of sectors. WSP works with clients in transportation, infrastructure, environmental services, energy, and buildings, offering expertise in everything from urban planning and climate adaptation to digital transformation and data-driven decision-making. As of 2025, WSP employs approximately 78,000 people globally and operates in over 40 countries with a strong presence in North America, Europe, Asia Pacific, and the Middle East. And I joined WSP to establish a data management practice, a strategic initiative driven by the executive leadership who recognized that improving data capabilities was essential to enhancing decision making across the organization. Since then, my focus has really been on our customer data domain.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining, Nicholas. As a matter of fact, WSP is running some major road construction projects right here in Austin. So you guys are busy all over the place. So,
That we are.
yeah, indeed. Well, hey, let's get things started here. And I just wanted to start. Maybe I'll kick it over to you first, Nicholas, and just talk a little bit about how did your organization even decide that you had some kind of master data management challenge within the group?
Thanks, Chris. That's a great question. So WSP is undergoing a major ERP migration initiative globally. So we've onboarded certain regions, Canada, US, UK, and Ireland. And we have those plans to expand really globally. And for us as well, we're a company that strives with a growth strategy on organic expansion and mergers and acquisitions. So the rapid growth, a lot of system consolidation that needs to happen for us. Those were prime triggers to have an MDM need. And really, we also did a bit of an audit, like what's our data reality check? And the pace of change really led to siloed data sources. We did also an audit of some of our customer data. After a few migrations, we had a 40% duplication rate. And so again, that was a lot of duplication, manual efforts, really clear indicators again that we had a bit of an MDM gap. And as well, the systems of poor data quality. So we did a lot of migrations, inconsistent customer data as you do those migrations, same things with mergers and acquisitions, and a lot of incomplete data information. Just lack of standard inconsistencies really led to a lot of manual cleansing. And for us, strategic goals, we want to get to a client-centric experience and a lot of operational efficiency. So I think those were really telltale signs that we had an MDM challenge on our hands, and we really needed an MDM program. It wasn't just optional, but it was essential given where we're going as a company.
Yeah, sure. Well, and when you bring data in through acquisitions or you're bringing from different systems, there's going to be inconsistent standards, different even attribution. So you have attribute gaps from one data source that you don't have in others. Is definitely a headache. Ben,
Yeah,
I know you had a few things like that too, right? What were some of the challenges that you experienced?
And just speaking to the international element there, once you start really having to say, okay, we're in an environment where it's USD versus CAD versus euros and everything else, GBP, like that's where you start really finding those gaps really come through strong, especially when you consider that depending on how you're structuring that master data, handling that master data, in your case, Nicholas, I mean, it can throw off the entire estate if you just are getting that one little attribute incorrect by the customer or what have you. So we've been down that rabbit hole and continue to kind of work towards our strategy as we've grown into the Canadian environment of ensuring that our data is, maintaining a standard quality that also is flexible to the environment that's being adjusted to.
Yeah, those are the common headaches that I hear with a lot of organizations, whether it's system migration or consolidation, expansion into new markets. Those are all key drivers for the organization, but data does sometimes get in the way once you start scratching the surface and seeing what's really going on underneath, and that's where you start finding some of those gaps. Ben, maybe you could continue a little bit on this then. Having identified there's some data issues or data gaps, how did you and the organization even kind of get started? Say, okay, well, we've got problems. We got to do something about it. And, you could throw spreadsheets and bodies at it like some organizations do. So how did you guys figure out, all right, we got to do something a little more scalable or a little more resilient than.
Oh, yeah. I think everybody starts at the throw a dashboard, throw an Excel file at it, and ultimately works their way up from there. No, that was certainly the case for us. We found that, for a while, we kind of consolidated a lot in between our technology department and a series of consultants with SOWs and sort of working with folks to try to scale us up. And the challenge that we had was the lack of institutional knowledge that kind of came by doing that sort of strategy. And of course, in the long run, viewing data as it needs to be, which is a continually monitored and cared for resource. So for us, it became more and more obvious as we had done our dashboards and realized, well, it'd be really nice if we could do this, or if we could do that, or had insight to this, or had some live link data, et cetera, that folks started to really grasp in the business that, this is something that we do need dedicated resources, and we need to be able to make this next change and this evolution and that. So fortunately for my part, when I came aboard, there was already a good buy-in from business and leadership and the like that, data really is a resource that we want to invest in and move forward with. So in our evolution, it was, okay, so how do we go about that process? How do we recognize what is needed to be built around this to push it forward? And so in our case, it was, we do need to have a good, clean engineering architecture and governance to be built on top of this estate. And so we started sort of working in that direction, developing those pieces. On top of that, it was like, well, not everybody can be working out an Excel file. We need to have the software and the platforms behind it to be able to build on top of that and make it institutional rather than situational knowledge. So that was sort of what got us into the phase that we've been in over the last couple of years of building up our data stack on top of everything that's going on in our own business.
Got it. Nicholas, sounds, when I've talked with you many, many times, sounds a little similar, kind of what you experienced at WSP.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely for us is we started small. We started taking a look, again, those client demographics, right? And we really have to anchor it over onto the strategy of the organization. And so for us, we started tackling it fairly small, trying to build a relationship with our business stakeholders, right? And sometimes it gets messy to try to get data owners, but you start at the sponsorship. And you go with the regional data stewards that are there, and some of the owners. There are people that will put their hands up, and you're getting them in a room to start talking and coming out with those common definitions, and just try to get to the scope, very small scope at a time, and the attributes. And for us, we made some good strides on the data quality. Like I said, our duplication rate is down significantly, and we're measuring the right attributes, and we're showing visibility to the business. MDM, data quality, it's a team sport, and it's not just an IT type of initiative.
Being such a large organization, being global, having different divisions, how did you even start to unravel that knot, right? You can't get every stakeholder and group that's involved with customer data in a room all at once, right? And that'd probably just be its own kind of chaos. So how did you break that down, Nicholas, to actually decide, okay, where do we start? And do we pick a particular group or team or business segment? How did you kind of break apart the challenge into bite-sized chunks?
Yeah, for sure. For us, we sat down our sales team. They were the ones that were the most impacted and really wanted to heavily invest into taking a look over at the data. So a lot of their business processes, how do we get the right number of clients? How do we measure the right number of opportunities? for our opportunities pipeline. So those are some of the business problems that we're forwarding. But there's no secret to it. Is you have to tie it over to the strategic, your strategy, your corporate strategy on how to move forward. And for us, having a client-centric approach really made the sponsorship from a chief client officer level that more impactful. And so for them and with the sales team, that's how we broke it down. And again, it's always a problem that we see when you start going over with key data elements and trying to measure what are the right data elements from your customer data. It's come in with a framework. Hey, what's the breadth of reach? What's the business process? What's the impact? Is there a financial impact? Is there a regulatory impact? And then you have to narrow it down. And a challenge that we see is a lot of our customers or a lot of the stakeholders come in and here's a list of could be 1,000 of attributes to start measuring. And that takes time, that takes effort, and you have to sustain it, right? It's not a one and done. And so really minimizing, really keeping it focused, making sure you don't get into the scope creep, because in order to deliver value, it's sometimes you have to go through it through iterative approaches. It's better to deliver some value than trying to wait too long and not deliver. And so once you start delivering, then it really shifts the culture, right? Success breeds culture.
Absolutely. Excellent. Ben, that sounds a little similar to what you guys were trying to do as well, is breaking this apart. And then I think the key part of it that's interesting is getting stakeholders, right? Nicholas, you're saying you had a chief client officer that was really kind of at the top driving this, that knew that they needed to make changes to be more client-centric. How did you break it apart in your organization at Batory Foods? And how did you get that leadership buy-in? Because I think that can sometimes be hard. People are like, we know we need better data, but great, better data. So what?
Yeah, I think the only from the leadership side, our biggest challenge was recognizing the necessity for tools and resources to do it. I think this statement, the problem statement, was pretty clear for the leaders, which very grateful to have at least that in place when we got started. But it certainly was one of those that as we kind of go through the experience of sort of getting with the stakeholders, I think one of the challenges that we faced was almost, I wouldn't say the opposite, but certainly a different type, which was our organization had gotten used to kind of the idea that, you can get this, you might not be able to get that. Just work around it. Just make your own spreadsheet. Just do your own thing. And trying to bring the stakeholder in to understand, no. Let's unify this a little bit. Tell us what attributes you need and start working on how do we get those into the system systematically through process, through our continuous improvement and the things that we're trying to do as an organization. That we had the challenge of, because somebody would go off and they'd set up their own SharePoint list or they'd build their own database. I was guilty of this back in the day. And so you would kind of have to sort of say, hey, come over here. You gotta work with the rest of the team. You're kind of messing with the one source of truth there. So that was kind of our big thing. And we could kind of identify those stakeholders and owners, especially because they cared the most. And so for us in the business, it was a little easier in our federated governance. We'd have these meetings. We'd kind of say, hey, who's using this? Who understands it? And who wants to be responsible for it and manage it? So we've been able to kind of progressively make our way and sort of pull those attributes out of our various business units to make sure that we're not overdoing it. Because absolutely what Nicholas spoke to there was spot on. Like we could have a bunch of attributes, but then recognizing the management behind those attributes is very important. That they have to know, hey, you're going to have to give us an update every 3 to 6 months. You can't just let it sit and forget it. So those are the big things for us too.
Yeah, our CEO has a phrase that I love that he uses often. He talks about you have to select the vital few versus the feudal many. Right? And sometimes when you kick these things off, it's like all of a sudden everybody wants everything, and whether it's an asset or a customer or a product, suddenly it's like, oh, we want 7 million attributes because everybody wants their own thing. It's like, well, no, what are the attributes that actually matter, that need to be consistent, that need to be governed and controlled, and whittling that down can be its own challenge. I'll actually kind of pass it back to you again, Nicholas, also, because you said something that's interesting. That was you had line of business stakeholders that were engaged and interested in helping to solve this problem. And that's a challenge a lot of organizations have. I see some of these MDM programs where they're IT centric and they struggle to get business engagement, business stewards that are going to actually work with and help curate the data. And so that's a challenge that some of them have. How did you get the engagement from the line of business people?
Yeah, I think you have to clearly articulate what's the business problem that you're trying to solve, right? And you need to have the agreement. And sometimes you have to be a bit of a mediator because maybe the sales team doesn't want to invest as heavily, but it'll be the finance team. They'll have more of the biggest impact, right? And in starting small, and it's also showing, okay, what are the inefficiencies? And the inefficiencies that we're going to have has a huge risk over on the operational side. So for us, trying to put in the standards where it actually saves time for the data conversion teams, for the sales team, getting the right, for example, controls on data entry really helps out. And I think articulating the business problem and where the outcome, where is the vision, where is it that we want to go, really gets you that buy-in from those business stakeholders. Now, having the buy-in as well to kind of hire or put people and resources over as data stewards, it's a hard sell. Even for us, certain regions are doing well, other regions we're getting them aligned, but I think it's showing visibility on the data health. And as they see the progress and the amount of hours that were invested, it really makes sense. And again, it's always a triad, right? It's a technology, it's a process, and it's a people, right? That's the equation that you need to solve. And the people part is just as important as the technology part. And sometimes with some of the technology, let's do the minimum investment and showcase the return on investment that we can do and where we're going. So for us, getting a customer health score up really demonstrated some of the benefits. And now we're getting more people, more advocating to try to help as we're expanding.
Awesome. Ben, I see you ready to kind of chime in on that as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Just echoing so many of the points there, just in terms of kind of keeping the visibility open has been a really essential part of what we've been doing as of late. And in terms of some of the work that our data governance specialist has been on top of, especially with Profisee at this very moment, is trying to get the business users to start to engage and visualize not only the leveraging, but also where the gaps currently kind of exist, and sort of to recognize that it's not just a problem out there in the ether. It's actually something that they can visualize, that they need to kind of do their part to maintain that health and the creation and maintenance of that data. So I think it's hitting us this sort of the same way. And of course, Nicholas, you guys are a much larger organization than us, but it's interesting to just kind of see that kind of happens between not only the smaller, which were somewhere between 500, 600 employees total, and obviously the large organizations. So definitely a true to fact on our side as well.
Yeah, and I think if you show, I don't know about you, Ben, but I know for us, we've had to show, okay, hey, when a customer becomes a prospect and then there's a conversion, there's a lot of steps, and we really need to standardize on, hey, what are the data attributes? And then we have to almost show, what does it show on the data value chain, right? It has an impact. And sometimes people just don't have that visibility. And it's you telling a bit of that story really helps out to convince a lot of your leadership and some of those delegate owners that you have that, there is a problem and there is validity in trying to institute standards. Sometimes data management, data governance can be perceived as a lot of red tape, and that's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to be non-evasive, and we're really trying to put in the right controls at the right time for the right value of data elements that get to the benefit.
Yeah. And sometimes they just, some of the challenges is that the answer sometimes is simply the word data, and you can just see the eyes gloss over the moment that you say it. Like that's sometimes, we'll be talking and you mentioned customers, and we talk about lead creation and the elements of what needs to move from a lead into a prospect into a customer. And then there's ownership levels and everything like that when it comes to hierarchy. And, in those conversations to us, or to, I should say, to the business user, it's as simple as, well, I want to see what my overarching pipeline is. And I want to understand what this customer need means to our business. And for a lot of our case, we're looking in the matrix of the numbers that are flying by everywhere and kind of going, well, then we need to talk about these subsequent attributes. And they say the word attributes, like, well, no, I just want to know what they mean to us. I was like, it's kind of the same thing. That's part of the great challenge is that communication barrier between, I just want the answer and the answer is starting with, this build up. So right on.
Yeah, I think that's I think one of the roles of data leaders or data heroes like you two within your organizations is to actually help make the connection between data issues and business issues. Because I think a lot of business leaders don't see that instinctively, right? And so, Nicholas, you're talking about onboarding, and if you don't get everything right, well, great, we just converted this new prospect into a client. Everybody's having this big rah rah. We had a big win. We got a new client, and they're all excited. But some of the data is missing, and when you go to bill them, you can't invoice them or invoice them correctly, and now there's problems and headaches. It's pointing out that there's real impacts to data gaps or data issues. I think that's one of our jobs as data leaders, is connecting those dots for stakeholders. And then that means you got to kind of really connect to how does the data flow through the business. So I know we don't have too much time left, but maybe talk a little bit, Nicholas, about how did you help connect those dots and create that understanding?
Yeah, for sure. I think for us, it was to take a look at the processes. Hey, what do we do for the data conversion? All right, who uses the sales data? What's the direct outcome? What are some of the challenges and the pain points? And really, we have a federated model where for a customer where we have owners and then delegate owners. We meet on a regular basis, and they talk about some of the issues that they have and what they're seeing and some of the challenges. And so those are great sound bites for you to do your storytelling. And how does that challenge the company trying to meet some of their strategic objectives, right? And if we want to go more organic growth, then we need to have a good data set that allows us to get that organic growth. And we need to have visibility on our data as well.
Yeah. Ben, it sounds like you had to go through that same process, right? Of shining a light on how the data issues create business issues.
Of course. Yeah, no. And it still remains the case that, part of our challenge is recognizing that the data doesn't have to come from that one resource that's being leveraged to, run our entire organization. That's sort of the issue is that kind of comes in play with us a lot of times is we try to use our current stack to also be our data management resource. And so, our enterprise resource program is doing a lot of heavy lifting. And because of that, it can get in the way of how we then expand into new markets and how our business continues to kind of grow and make additional opportunities. So I know in our case, it is kind of sitting there and kind of saying, this doesn't have to live there. It can live here. It can be managed this way, managed that way. And so, yeah, when we start sort of illustrating the nature of our data today and even sort of proposing new ways of thinking about it, I'd say that's probably one of our greatest challenges in any of our data management today is sort of changing the perspective of, that particular attribute doesn't need to live there or that particular piece doesn't need to live there. And if it doesn't live there, you'll see an optimization. We'll simplify the job for this group and for that group. And life will become easier if we just make that change. But we got to take that first step and life will become a little harder to start and then become a little easier. One step back, 2 or 3 steps forward, 10 steps forward in a lot of cases. So those are a big parts for us as well.
Got it.
Yeah. And I was just going to chime in, just even from a forecasting, right? If the opportunities aren't tied to the right customer, how do you get the right pipeline or forecasting to come in? So those are like business problems that you can articulate where, I see the impact, right? It sounded maybe mundane, but yeah, these attributes do make a difference over into the value chain.
Yeah, for us and our product lines are very similar just in terms of, there's a big difference between moving a truckload of sugar and trying to move whey protein concentrate, or I should say a big thing of chocolate. There are elements and attributes that are very important to, knowing if it's cold outside, you can move that chocolate, no problem. If it's not cold outside, you probably need a refrigerated truck. So those sorts of elements that if the ball is dropped, we're not governing it properly, not managing it, it can have mass implications to our overall bottom line when something gets rejected or if the product itself is destroyed in any capacity. So very important in terms of the running and managing there, very similarly.
Yeah, that's really key. And I think those are some really good examples that I think will be helpful to the group listening here today. Is building those connections to real impact is vital. We've got a few minutes left, so maybe we can kind of just wrap up. Nicholas, I'll pop it back to you, but just kind of summarize where you're at, at a high level of, hey, here's what we've achieved so far. And then I think something that everybody always wants to hear is what would be some of the lessons learned? What advice would you give to the other data heroes out here on the session today?
Yeah, absolutely. So right now, since we started putting in our framework in place and monitoring our data quality and master data management, so I was saying that we've really reduced down on the number of duplicate accounts that we have. So we have a dashboard, and we're just starting with a small Power BI dashboard. Again, incremental. We're tracking. We're really close. Our objective was to get to a 90% data quality rate. We're really on track for that. We're very close. We're at 89.8. So we're really, really close. And it's good, and we're making some really good strides on that, and it's good enough that now we're expanding into other data domains, right? Where are there more opportunities? But again, it's documenting the use case. What's the return on investment? Why are we investing? Again, always comes back to the business problem and the strategy, and that would be some of my lessons learned that I would say is, why are you doing this? We have to articulate that. I know sometimes we're really into the trenches, into the technology with the data, but unless we relate it to business problems, it's going to be a tough sell for your executive, for your stakeholders to get on board. And so you get into that. And the other piece of challenges that I have, and most of us have, and I'm sure Ben, you've been living this as well, is stay focused, stay very small, focused. Don't go too broad. It's a common mistake. I've been there. I've done that mistake where we take on too much, and let's just deliver on what we promised, and let's not go too far. And the other great success that we're having is now we're putting our MDM at the forefront in validating some of the mergers and acquisitions that we're doing and some of the new regions we're onboarding. So now we're taking a look at scanning the customer base that we've got there. Do we have duplicates? And we're trying to prevent all that duplicates, and we're trying to standardize those key client demographics before coming in, which is great. It's a lesson that we learned through the other migrations, and now we're trying to proactively making sure that we're on a good step with the future migrations.
Ben, any closing advice or words to the group out here today?
Yeah, no, I mean, echoing exactly what you were saying there, Nick, about biting a little too much. I mean, that's our experience today, and where we're currently kind of flowing is, we're trying to get a lot up at once because we've made some migration changes in terms of how we're operating our data estate. So that was a big lift. And then we also have our master data manager. We also have our governance tool. So we're kind of building everything up all at once. And I'd say that would be some of the cautionary elements, while recognizing that part of that was some choice, some not, of what we needed to do to get to where we had to go. But certainly keeping that in mind, and being realistic with the business as you kind of go through those scenarios and find those solutions. Just always keep the business with you as you go along, communicate as much as possible. There's no reason to hide. Hey, we're falling behind here. We're trying to do that. Definitely approaching it domain by domain is a very good practice. I would say certainly best practice as we start to sort of tackle multiple domains ourselves. We find ourselves in some of the situation of having to drop one to do the other, and then nobody gets a full amount of attention. So
Right.
Definitely cautionary tales for us, for sure.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate everybody here. We've just got about a minute left. So any other just closing thoughts or remarks you'd offer, Ben?
Just appreciate the time and opportunity. It's been a great experience in terms of getting to dive into Master Data Manager. I think it's something very kind of important, just as a note, that it has played an essential role and continues to for us. That if we were to kind of even go back and sort of say, hey, was this the right time or was that the right time? I think any time was going to be ideal for us to at least have it in the pocket. Right now, it's not in full implementation for us, but, or I should say it's not in full production, but it is certainly a solution that we can continue to leverage and drive. So definitely an important element for what I would say.
Awesome. Any closing thoughts, Nicholas?
Just want to be very thankful for the time and the opportunity to be here and tell the story of WSP and its journey over to data management. And it's a journey. It's not a one and done. Be flexible, be agile. That's where we are. We're constantly making some changes and trying to get the standards up in place. But also sometimes trying to get data ownership is difficult. It could be messy, but it doesn't need to be perfect. If you're getting people in a room and you're talking about data, that's already the first victory under your belt.
Awesome. Well, gentlemen, thank you again. Ben, Nicholas, taking time out of your day to share your thoughts and wisdom with our data heroes and budding data heroes out there in the data universe. So thank you both again. And I hope everybody has a terrific rest of your day and terrific rest of the Data Hero Summit.
Thank you.
Thank you.